Welcome back to Tony Brown's wonderful deep dive life story. It's been such a great opportunity to experience and work through, share the journey that's got you to this point of success in your life. And I was eager to be part of this opportunity with Tony because of the extremity of growth that you went through up until, I'm going to say present day, but I don't make present day today. I want to make it present as the time when, the reality of your business, how that transformed your past into your future. On this episode, it's a big one for me because, we talked about, you had a home hard dress, but yet you were homeless. The summers with your friend, Michael Steele, and the reality of family life. And we touched into then, mom and dad basically disappeared off the face of the earth. But then, of course, now at 15, you were diagnosed with chronic depression, and you were being medicated at 15 for chronic depression, but yet been expected to academically still carry success, still carry the same stamina of thinking, being in life. And now, drugs and academia, you loved it. and just think about that message there, that intro to this portion was at 16, your parents divorced. Your mom moved to Ireland, and you're again homeless, no address at 16, which seems such a contradiction with dad's success. Mom wasn't an unsuccessful person. She had a career. She was a lecturer and, and a carer. So, someone that she was someone that provided in life to strangers, to other people, that she didn't provide for her son. Such a contradiction there. And she would have been seen as this person, this caring, loving person. But behind her, she didn't care for. But she had to be seen to be caring. And that was her career. But let's look at this, homeless, 16, and now 18, you now left school. And when you think about this, you spent the summer at Andy's, but even then we're going to look at the experience where you had to move out because the colour of your skin at Andy's. So tell me, where are we here? Between 16 and 18, you'd spent the time in the boarding school. Basically, that was your home. Mm-hmm. Free lodgings or on the street. Now there's a divorce, so there's no family home for you now whatsoever. You're again moving in with friends to you're basically home surfing. They say sofa surfing, you're home surfing is where you are. But yet in a place of where it would be considered a level of living, because it's not middle class, it's upper class. This is a bit that's conflicting. This is the bit I want you to understand is you don't have to be skint to be homeless. You came from a family with money. You were in a life where families had money, but yet you were homeless. Think about that. Isn't it such a confusing thought? It must have been so confusing for you. Homeless you would consider in those days, someone who was homeless was someone that had no money, almost like and I'll say this for the sake of the conversation, not in judgment, a bum on the street. You weren't that. You had the privilege of a boarding school, the privilege of higher education, the privilege of friends that lived with families that had money. How did that measure out? Give me some thoughts on that.
It's just an interesting one because in that environment, I think because we'd all been thrown together in the school very closely for a long time, everybody looked out for each other. If you're in that group of friends, then everyone's looking out for each other. And I was very, very fortunate to be in that position.
Yeah.
But it was very strange in some ways, being in that position and living in a house where the main car is a Rolls-Royce convertible.
Wow.
And the driveway is half a mile long. But those people looked after me and cared for me like I was one of their own. And I'm forever grateful to them for that. So those two families and that headmaster got me through a situation where we could have had a sliding doors moment, where I could have gone that way or the other way. And fortunately, I went not through the sliding door that led to jail and complete destitution. It was interesting because coming to terms with that, I just thought, right, now I have to sort myself out. And then when it came to going to college, I hit another barrier. And that was when I realized that, unlike all my other friends who were getting grants or whatever, I was not going to get one.
Yeah, I have this here on my notes that, so is Northeast London Polytechnic?
That's right.
Yeah, and you studied, you went in to study psychology, which is ironic, eh? but natural.
Yes.
But then also, this is when things start to come back, when you're past them back. Because I called it my childhood stole my late teens and early 20s. Because there's number blindness. Now let's remember that coming back into episode 1, where effectively, if you got the equation wrong with dad, he beat you. If you spelled something wrong, he beat you. Which means it's either you go into the place where I never get it wrong, or I just can't approach it.
Yeah.
It's a number blindness. Tell me what that feels like. Because, I'm dyslexic, so spelling for me isn't easy. It never has been. I don't know why I should be. But tell me about number blindness.
I think the thing was that because I would get beaten if I got sums wrong, I'd either not practice them in case I got them wrong, so I didn't learn, and I'd avoid them.
Yeah.
So that ended up in me having to do my maths O-level 6 times before I got it.
Wow.
Then, weirdly, when I signed up to do a psychology degree, and this is so funny looking back on it, I signed up to do a BSc instead of a BA. And of course, a BSc has a 3-hour unseen statistics paper, lots of stats and maths involved, which I didn't think about when I signed up for it. And so it was a bit of a shock to the system.
but again, looking at those times, you're 19 is what I have. You're 19, and basically you've got no grant because your parents won't sign the paperwork. Mom threw you back to dad. Dad threw you back to mom. So now you've got communication, though, which hasn't been around for some time with mom and dad. Was this a communication that you felt that you only did because there's formality, or did you want mom and dad into your life?
No, I really knew that from now on I had to make my own way. But what the problem was that I could not get a grant because my dad wouldn't. I asked my mum, I said, could you just sign the paper so I can get the grant and go to college? No, your dad has to do that. Dad, can you sign it? No, you're not going to do law, which is what I want you to do, so I'm not signing it.
Wow.
And so what am I supposed to do? Sort yourself out.
What did mom and dad feel like to you as human beings? If I think about my mother and father, I think about the nurturing. I think about the memories, there are memories there that made me feel good, I think about them as nurturing human beings. When you think about mom and dad, what's your thoughts of kind of?
They've changed over the years, my thoughts. Obviously, when I was small, it was just fear. You're brutal, beatings, violence. As I got older, And now, especially being, you know, a black person born in this country of that generation, I understand that this happens with a lot of immigrants who come. They want their kids to do the best they can. And if they can't nurture them in a positive way, then they'll scare them and beat them to ensure that they achieve what they want them to do. Some of them get locked in rooms and forced to, you know, just study, never allowed out. It takes many different forms and formats. And so on one level, you know, I could say, well, my parents were just trying to do the best for me with what they knew at the time. My dad had struggled an awful lot when he came here. He studied, he got a degree in chemistry and agriculture, but could only get a job on British Rail as a guard.
Oh, wow.
And that made him really quite bitter and angry. So again, that was another reason for him to be angry and to be violent and whatever. Not an excuse, but a reason as to why he was like that. And so I think that in some ways, in his own weird way, he might have been thinking, you need to be toughened up, boy, because the world's going to be damn cruel to you. But he took that too far.
Wow. But then we come to that grand time in the college, you know, needing that paperwork signed, it didn't happen. Now, of course, you're in a financial crisis at 19. And to a point where you've lived a middle-class life effectively, somewhat, and now you're in that life, but yet you can't even afford to buy food. You're almost homeless or on the street as such, no food, but yet you have this background of this money life. And it's such a contradiction. But tell me about that time, you know, when you're 19, there's no food. And you met then Mick. You met Mick at the college. You know, Mick was in those days a drug dealer, and
may need to use a different name.
Yeah, we may need to use a different name for that. But you know, let's not say that. I don't want to put it into the hardness of drug. Okay, I don't want to put it into that environment because, you know. But he also, as a mate, he brought you casual work. You know, a bit of painting and things like this. So, but here's the thing: boarding school, left school, now you are casual, anything at all to get food in your belly, which effectively is somewhat dad. Dad, you know, come from that poverty, got, you know, I guess get that kind of education, you know, and then do anything he can. So there's an entrepreneur part in you, but the years again, and I know it might sound like I'm bouncing a little, but coming from that money environment and you're now rock bottom, lower than a snake's belly, as they would say. You know, what is it your survival mode again from when you were 6-year-old? Is that what's kicked back in now, do you feel?
I think it was a mixture of that. And again, I thought about this quite a bit, and I thought maybe my dad was still doing this deliberately and saying, you just need toughening up. I had to go through that. I had to work my way through college. Now you're going to have to as well.
But he's not even there at this point.
No, he's not. But his reasoning for not signing the form for me to get a grant could well have been that. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Did Dad know that you were in a place where, and Mum, homeless as such, no food, financial crisis? Did they know this about you, or did you just work on through yourself?
No, my mother knew, and my father, I'd lost contact with him for a while. He disappeared for a bit. So I don't know if he knew or didn't know. But he knew that all he had to do was sign a form for me to have a different outcome at college. But again, looking back, I can't complain about the outcome because I just learned so much from having to sort of fly by the seat of my pants sometimes, borrow, scrimp and save from people, borrow some money from that person, try and hide from them for a bit, borrow a bit from someone else, pay them back, run around, wait till I got another job, pay other people back. And that was a very challenging time, but also I was lucky. Again, I came across some very kind people at college who helped me through, and then obviously getting lots of casual jobs, meeting lots of interesting, shady characters to stay alive.
I feel though that we kind of scan in a certain area here, because I want to come into the ups and downs of drug cocktails.
Yeah.
And I need to go there, because this isn't a judgment on your character, but this is a time in your life which is important. And now, there is uppers smoking for downers. There's still antidepressants. Now, effectively, there's not much else you could put in there to dislodge your emotional alignment as a human being. These are blurred days, because, first of all, you're in between. Well, you're still in that age, 18, 19. You're in that age there. And I'm not going to move on to the next bit yet, where we went back into exams. But what was that like there? Would you think this was self-destruct? I mean, what was going on there?
Yeah, I think some of it was maybe not self-destruct at this stage. It was more just a coping mechanism.
Okay.
It's how do I cope with what my life has become?
How bad was that?
It was pretty bad. I did go sometimes without eating for some days, or I would get a packet of bacon bits from the butchers who would scrape it up and say, here's 10 pence worth of bacon bits.
Oh, wow.
A loaf of bread, and then I had bacon bit sandwiches for the next few days. Wow. Then there was trying to pay my share of the rent for the flat with the other guys that I was sharing with, and I'll have to borrow from someone else to pay that. And then just find other ways to keep the plate spinning.
Were there times that you thought, I just can't be here anymore?
Not at that time.
Well done.
No, not at that
well
time.
done. I mean, we all have a youth stamina in us that has a stronger stamina than you do. But well done, because, coming back though, your academic failures, but drug excellence. I've named this next portion this, because your first academic failures at 19, which is in your college exams, and then you're back to the sanctuary of Michael Steele to get aligned and study again. If my timing is right on this, to pass the exam and get back aligned. So effectively, at this time, is it like, okay, I'm going clean. I've got to come off the drugs. I'm coming off the alcohol. I'm not doing this. I need to study. I need to get that academic alignment back.
I can't say I went clean, but I did reduce my intake of things to the point where I could focus and just, give myself a kick up the rear and say, you've just got to do this now. Yeah. You've got to focus on this. Otherwise, what you're going to do.
Was this for you, though, or do you feel somewhat it was still for your dad? Passing these exams, getting these academic certificates.
I think this was from because my peer group and friends were doing it.
Oh, okay.
And, I thought, well, if I don't do this, what am I going to do? And so that was a good motivator at the time for me as well.
So you cleaned up from the drugs, but there's still some alcohol in there, or you're on 19 in the day. We do have a stamina, but did you feel that there was a need? You just think, got to pull myself from this.
Yes, and we still go out to the pub and and have a few pints here and there, but I was still focused on getting through the exams.
Well, let me move a little further on with this, and you're off the wagon now. I'm going a little further, which is my academic failures and drug excellence is back in full swing. So 2 decades after birth, you are now reaching your emotional bankruptcy, where there's lots of alcohol, lots of drug, lots of self-abuse. So you're 21, you failed your final exams, and basically the drugs had won. And your relationship and basically girls are not working for you. So you're at 21, which is actually supposed to be a peak time in our young life. Drugs are winning over. Your academic life was falling apart, which means there's a discredit to dad again in that emotion would have been carrying through there, and there's no intimacy. There's no affection, because relationships can't be held together either, which is what you experienced in your childhood.
Yeah.
What is going on there in those days? Is it clawing through, or how are you managing?
Well, what happened after failing my finals first time is I thought, okay, you really screwed up now. What you going to do? And I thought, I've got to go back and finish them. I can't spend this time at college 3 years and then just not achieve anything. So I thought, I'm going to have to go back and do it again. And but then I thought, I've got to sustain myself with a job to do this. And I remember I got one of these London evening papers, and I saw a job for, it was in an insurance company.
Yeah.
They wanted some people to do temporary work, and it was coding or taking information from, remember these big old leather insurance binders?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody had written in with a quill pen. And then you'd have to take that information, put it onto computer forms, which then get fed into computers. That was the changeover that was happening around the end of the 70s, early 80s.
Hold that thought for me, because I want to come back a little, because I'm seeing in my notes there. I want to also, so I have something here called Ice Cream Anyone. Ice Cream Anyone, because I want to just touch into, because you've jumped out of your I'm going to say your animal days here, okay? Which is effectively, tell us about the ice cream van. I mean, this is such a story.
Oh, goodness. This was one of the summer holiday jobs when I was at college.
There was loads of summer holiday jobs.
There were lots of them, you know, breweries, and one of them was the ice cream van holiday.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I was driving an ice cream van. I was not in a fit state to do so. And, you know, everybody must have a tune in their head of the ice cream van that they remember when they were small. Go round and round your head. Well, I was a drug and drink-addled person driving this ice cream van with this tune going round and round, which was driving me nuts anyway. And I was selling these ice creams and then moving on to the next place. And the thing about ice cream is that it's very territorial when you're selling it.
Okay.
And a lot of Italian families involved in this stuff. And I was often encroaching on somebody else's territory, and I'd get threatened. And start up my van and drive off to somewhere else. And hopefully I wasn't on someone else's territory. But then I overdid it one day, and I crashed. And I wrecked the van. Still to this day, don't know exactly what I hit.
So were you drinking at the time?
More than likely. Yes.
I mean, what a story, you know. In your early 20s, you know, drinking, selling ice cream, and then you have the pleasure of smashing up an ice cream van. I can only imagine that the owner wasn't that happy, that's for sure.
Oh my goodness. They were not. Eventually took the van back with its buckled front and everything. Oh, wow. And they came out of the ice cream place shouting and screaming and swearing at me in Italian, and jumped into my friend's car and he drove me away.
Oh, brilliant.
I was petrified.
But let me jump into our next little portion, which is drip feeding happiness, the word drip. Drip feeding happiness, the word drip. So Whitechapel Hospital.
Yeah.
I want you to come in. I'm going to start with Whitechapel Hospital. Let's dive into there. Tell me about those days.
Right. All the way through from when I was 15, I'm still on antidepressants, having to go to the doctors. Every time a new antidepressant came out, they would try that. It's like I was a lab rat in a way.
Wow.
And the irony of doing psychology, and while I'm popping these antidepressants, learning about clinical psychology, was not lost on me.
Mm-hmm.
After a while, however, they said, look, these aren't working. We need to give you something intravenously. Mm-hmm. And so I think it was 2 or 3 times a week, I would be sent to the Whitechapel Hospital. I would lie there and they would hook me up with something, and I didn't even know what it was. They'd put this in my arm, and I'd be lying there like this for a couple of hours, then be back off. Then again, once or twice a week, I'll be back there having this stuff put in my arm. Don't even know what it was to this day. And that was on top of oral
Yeah.
Antidepressants.
And what
as
was
well.
this voluntary, or was it something that you were told it was best for you? I mean, how did this come about?
It was always, it's best for you. You need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And as time went on, I was just like, listen, you're going to have to be on these things for the rest of your life.
Did they not talk about your past? Did they not, was that not brought into the measure of emotional state that you were in?
No.
Wow. Wow. And and how long was that for? Because I can only imagine that's just taking you deeper into a mess now.
Yeah. Because, I'm having the oral pills.
Yeah.
I'm having this stuff in my arm. And
you call it just stuff because you have no idea.
I didn't even know what it was that they were putting in my arm.
Wow.
And then on top of that, I'm still drinking alcohol and smoking dope like it's going out of fashion.
How are you managing just to keep yourself afloat? But here's where we are, because we move into the next bit, which is, do I have insurance? And you already started touching on this, which is you've got a job in an insurance company, and it brought a little bit of focus back there for you.
Yes. Yeah. The first thing I had to do was dress in a sort of suit and tie for the first time to go to work, which I'd never done.
Yeah.
And just used to sit there all day with these big leather-bound things and copy information out onto these computer pieces of paper, which someone else would then put into another device.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting time. I had to go for the interview there the first time, and I didn't know what it was like to go for an interview the first time. So I had this suit on, and at the time I was reading a book called The Dice Man.
Okay.
By somebody called Luke Reinhardt.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anybody's ever read that book, but somebody lives his life by rolling a dice.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives himself options depending on where from 1 to 6 the dice would fall. And that's literally how he lives his life. Shall I do this? Shall I commit this crime? And
it's almost like putting tarot cards out, and it's just crazy.
It's an amazing book. And I was reading that while waiting to go in for my interview. Went in for my interview, and there's this actuary sitting there behind the desk interviewing me. And he just looked at the book. Oh, The Dice Man, what do you think of it? And we just talked about the book for about half an hour. He said, anyway, start on Monday.
Oh, wow. That's when the days were interviewed. Like, you go see the bank manager. Do you know what I mean? We can't even do that anymore. But here's the thing. You left the job 2 weeks before the exams.
Yeah.
Why? What were you thinking? Because that's not straight thinking there, do you think?
Well, what I'd done was saved up as much money as I could by doing this job. And then I thought, okay, now I can stop and now just focus all day, study literally round the clock before.
What are the benefits? Because now you're going back to, Dad needed you to study. Dad needed you to study in order for you to feel loved.
This was my last chance. It was literally my last roll of the dice.
Was it, Tony?
That's how it felt at the time.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm petrified because I've got to go and do this 3-hour unseen statistics paper. And I'm thinking, how the hell do I do that? And luckily, a friend of mine he'd passed the year before me.
Yeah.
He said, look, I'll help you out with your stats. He came round and said, go and get a pack of special brew, 6-pack. Okay. I didn't need much encouragement. He said, right, now I'll take you through what was called a 3-way cross-nested analysis of variance. Okay, here's the first line of the equation. Here's the second line. Drinking while I'm going through this. And after we'd done this for a few evenings, I realised I had a sweet spot 3/4 of the way through the first can
of special brew.
I could.
It relaxed you out of number blindness.
Absolutely.
Wow.
That was when I realised that when you come out of your normal experience or level of consciousness, you can, when you're relaxed enough, be it through meditation, drink, drugs, do things that you might not normally be able to do.
Hold that thought, though. Don't try this at home. No. Do you know what I mean?
Don't try this. Don't do this at home, folks.
But and then, because I remember you shared the story where you then went into the exam room with a can of brew. How do they even allow a can of brew in there when everybody else has got coffees and things?
That was just a surreal moment. Probably for them, not so much for me. But everybody's standing outside the exam room. They're having coffees, the lecturers, the invigilators. And I'm standing there with a can of special brew and waiting. Think, that's about 3/4. I'll leave that there.
Yeah.
And went in and it hit the sweet spot, looked at the paper, had to do 5 questions. Here we go, boom, 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 boom.
Wow.
4 questions done in record time. And I thought, yep, they'll do. And I thought, I can't find another one here. Well, I'll just have a stab at this one and see.
Yeah.
Come to the end of exam, you know, everybody's out. Which ones did you do? And I said, I did this. And I said, I couldn't really find a 5th one. They said, oh, well, I did this. And, you know, then I turned over. Turned over. It never occurred to me to turn the flipping exam paper over.
Brilliant. But let me move with this, because here's the thing is that, you know, you did the exam, but I'm 22-year-old now, homeless again, with no address and unemployed. I'm like, what? You went back to the exam, but now you're now sofa surfing. And, you know, and then from there, because there's 2 stories here where you're sofa surfing, and of course, the short life houses, peppercorn rent.
Yeah.
This is a whole different chapter. What happened from the excitement of the exam to that point of sofa surfing? What happened?
Well, got through the exam, and then that was great. And then I had a summer of, I think it was painting railings that summer.
Okay. So all the work for the exams, but yet you're painting railings. I'm not finding the alignment here.
Well, it was literally still just doing anything.
Yeah.
So it's painting railings, working in a betting shop, writing up the odds.
Oh, okay.
And doing a bit of roadie work and whatever I could find. And then things dried up. Couldn't find anything. And then ended up with nowhere to live as well.
Oh, wow.
The place that we were living in, the lady who had the main tenancy said, you know, I'm pregnant now, I need all of you lot out, go. Mm-hmm. So did some more sofa surfing, and eventually came across this thing called a short life housing co-op. Now, I didn't know anything about this at first, but some of my friends had got into this and said, look, you know, what we do is take over all these uninhabited houses that the council want to knock down, which are kind of uninhabitable, but we fix them up for a certain period of time. And we give the council a peppercorn rent.
Who's funding this?
Nobody's funding it as such. What happens is the council, if they agree to it, will give you, if you've set yourself up as a short life housing co-op, will give you access to these houses.
And were they bad?
They were in bad condition, but you had to give them an undertaking that you'd bring them up to a habitable standard, which would pass certain health and safety things like the electrics and the plumbing and stuff like that. Then you could take over these properties until the council decided that they want to bulldoze them and knock all these lovely old terraced houses down and put some high-rise.
So how long were you at the short life houses for?
Probably about a couple of years.
It's just surreal. Bear in mind, you come from that. You know, you come from what was a rich home. Dad had money, or at some point he did, because when the house got repossessed, was the repossession out of pure, I'm not going to pay because we're not together, so let him take it, you know, and he still had money, but then the spite of him and mum was pretty intense, for sure. But here's the thing is that, you know, we are now from sofa surfing, and we got the short life houses, and then you said, okay, I need to find me. Because there's I'm going to say, a low point that couldn't go any lower in that place. Because you said, you know, you got work then at the local dole office or unemployment office.
Where I was signing on.
Yes, that's just crazy. And then you started to save money with a girlfriend. Yeah. So now you're in a relationship. You're 22 is what I have at this age here. You're still only in the second decade of life. You've lived 3 lives already. And, you know, you turned your life around, but I've got possibly. Yes. Possibly. So just this chunk here. Let's dive into this. Tell me about this chunk.
Well, Is this are we going into the...
Yeah, so we got the employment office.
Yeah.
You start to save money. You're in a relationship.
Yes.
And it looks like you're turning your life around.
Right.
So let's just talk about the beginning of that.
Sure. So then I have a job. I have a roof over my head. And also I'm sort of getting into fitness.
Oh, okay.
And playing football several evenings, doing a bit of running, clean myself up a bit. Then one day I went to a party. I was invited to a party in town. Now, because I was working in the Dole office, which I didn't particularly like, I always took my CVs with me, and at lunchtime I'd be looking for new jobs to apply for.
Okay.
I was trying to send them off, to have envelopes, stamps.
The days when we posted something.
Absolutely. So I'd have my plastic bag full of all this stuff, and every day I'd be sending off CVs and things, looking for work.
And you're in a relationship now, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so life's, pretty calm and sensible. Even got a cat.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, I went to this party in Victoria one night.
Okay.
And it was held by one of my friends from the old days. And it was wild and raucous, and people were drinking and smoking and doing whatever. Anyway, I thought, right, it's about 1 o'clock. I thought, I've got to go to work tomorrow. No, not work, because it was a Friday night.
Yeah.
I thought, I still better get home. Went to go and look for a night bus. So
there were night buses, man.
That's right. Walked out of this place, went and stood at a bus stop. So if I get a bus from here, that will move me in the right direction. I'll get home eventually. Standing at the bus stop, and this police car pulls up.
Yeah.
This police officer gets out and says, "What are you doing?" I said, "It's a bus stop. I'm waiting for a bus." "Don't be funny, son." I thought, "I'm not being funny. It's a bus stop. I'm waiting for a bus." Says, "Right, turn your pockets out." I did. Says, "Right, what's in that bag?" And I said, "Well, just be, I'm applying for jobs, so it'll just be, sort of stuff for that." Anyway, he puts his hand in this bag and pulls out a lump of hash.
Okay. So that's marijuana, yes?
Marijuana.
Yeah.
And he says, "What's this?" And I don't know what happened, but my brain sort of flipped. And I thought, so he's looking at me, thinking that I'm a crook and a gangster anyway, so I thought, I'll behave like one. So I swore at him in sort of Rastafarian language and lived up to whatever expectations, down to whatever expectations he was looking for.
Or maybe the expectations you were used to from Dad, eh?
Well, or from his stereotypical view of me. It was bad stuff, man, blah, blah, blah. And he said, "Right, we'll have to take you in." And he rang up, or radioed through to the station. Another 2 cars and a van came to take me to the station, which was a few streets away.
Yeah.
Sat me down, asked me a load of questions, put me in the cell for the night. Got me out the next morning, said, "Right, you'll be up before the magistrate Monday morning. Just plead guilty, you get a 20 quid fine." I said, "No." He said, "Why not?" I said, "Because I don't know where that came from. That's not my bag.
Yeah.
I must have picked somebody else's bag up. It's not mine." No, come on, just plead guilty. Do yourself a favour, don't be a prat."
Yeah.
I said, "No, I'm not doing it." So anyway, I had to sign all this stuff, and then they said, "Right, turn up Monday, magistrate's court," which I did, and pleaded not guilty.
Yeah.
I said, "Right, you'll be going to Crown, this will be referred to Crown Court, and then you'll be tried by a jury and all this stuff." I didn't even understand exactly how all that worked. So I went and found a solicitor's in the East End, and near where I lived, and I said, "Look, this is what's happened. I have no idea what to do now." And they asked some questions about my background and everything.
Yeah.
And then burst out laughing. I said, "What's so funny?" And he said, "Oh, a middle-class spade."
Oh, my word. Wow, that's just bad.
That was
a middle class spade. Wow. Let's look at this, because there's a period now between this solicitor and going to Crown Court. That's correct, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Because now I've got a year. I'm innocent but still in prison. So this run up now is really going to pull on you emotionally, and the stress of the whole experience is now putting you right back into what is full-blown functioning alcoholic.
Absolutely, yeah.
And a supportive girlfriend as such that, that really did try to work with you. But you're on self-destruct because you are now, for me, what I'm seeing is that the court case is a repeat of Dad's disappointment.
It was,
a person of authority is now going to make a judgment of you. And that's what Dad was. That's what Mum was. A person of authority was making a judgment of you. But as an adult, you're going in, it's not Dad there, but it's a person of authority. So it's back to love is pain again.
Well, and also the threat of getting a record for that, which could mess up my life indefinitely, as it had done for many people. And the police, kept saying, look, just you should have done this, you should have just pled guilty and so on. I said, no. And they said, well, you do understand that if you're found guilty, that you could get sent down for this now.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, fully understand, but I'm not going to do it your way. And these solicitors, who in their jovial way, said, okay, we'll get an appointment for you with a barrister at the ends of court, and we'll help you out with this. Now, I didn't have full faith in them, especially after their flippant comment. I thought, oh, crikey. I said, you're having a laugh. Anyway, they sent me to the Inns of Court to see a barrister. I went there, and the barrister was a black guy.
Oh, wow.
And so I thought, the solicitor's calling me a middle-class spade, and he's sending me to see a black barrister to represent me. It's
ironic, eh?
Absolutely. Now, the thing about this, when you go to a Crown Court, is that usually it's in an area where the crime was committed or whatever. And so I thought it would be somewhere in London or something like that. But I had to wait 9 months because
that's a stretch.
The way it works. And as you say, the stress was insane. I was drinking myself to pieces.
Let me jump in there because, the stress is there. But I'm going to say that the increase of stress was from the triggers that you felt with Dad, who always shared his disappointment of you, and again, a voice of authority, a feeling of authority. Same with Mum. And when we go to that level of legal judgment in that kind of court scenario, then we do know we're stepping into an arena with an authority that we cannot backchat to. We cannot physically emotionally respond to in any given way, because they are the law of the land, which was Dad was the law of your land. Do you see the trigger there then? Effectively, you drank yourself back into your childhood.
That's right. And the thing is that, in a Crown Court, you've got a judge in a wig who sits higher than you. You're in a dock, literally. And the whole system is set up to make you powerless, which is what you are when you're in that position. And, as you said, during that 9 months, I almost destroyed myself completely.
Wow.
During that period, I was getting up in the morning, drinking vodka, going into work.
Wow. How old are you there?
22.
Wow, that's just brutal.
I was drinking at the pub at lunchtime more, and then in the evening, and it was just going round the clock like this.
Yeah.
I'd stopped exercising, I stopped playing football. It was just total self-destruct for that period.
Yeah.
Now, this barrister said to me, this is how we're going to do this. I need you to go and get 3 credible witnesses who can tell everybody what a nice guy you are. And so I sought out 3 people. One was now a social worker who used to share the flat with me at college.
Okay. Not Mick.
No. I'll come back to him. Then there was another guy who worked with me in the Dole office, who was a mixed race guy, who was Scottish and an ex-police officer.
Oh, wow. There it is, eh?
Which was a really interesting mixture. And the third one was my old head boy from Wellingborough.
Yeah.
And he said, right, okay, get these 3, let me speak to them, prep them, and so on. And then eventually the grand day comes and we go to Crown Court in St Albans. And dressed up, suit, curly perm, as it was in those days, tie the lot. and stood in the dock. And started off with the judge saying, police officers, what happened? And they said, we picked him up on the street. He had this marijuana in his pocket and he swore at us in a Rastafarian language and said, it's bad stuff, man, and blah, blah, blah. And the judge looked at me and said, Mr. Brown, did you say this? And I said, I have no idea what he just said. I don't know what he's talking about. And obviously, there's a very different persona to how the police described.
Yeah, yeah.
And also the jurors saw that there was a big disconnect there as well. And then my barrister called up my witnesses. The first one, Pete, the social worker, said, no, he's a complete athlete at college. He would never touch drugs or whatever. Tom, the ex-copper, said, no, of course he wouldn't do something like that. He said, I'm ex-job, I would, I know this.
At least at that given point, we're going to say.
That's
yeah.
Well, and then my ex-head boy, Andy, was called up, and the barrister said, oh, and how do you know him? He said, oh, he's head boy at school. He said, but you've got some particular qualifications, haven't you? He said, well, yes. He said, well, what do you do? He said, well, at the moment, I'm washing up every night in a pub. He said, I'm trying to become an actor. He said, yes, but you've got specific qualifications, haven't you? He said, oh, well, yeah, I'm a qualified barrister. And the judge just looked at him and said, actor, barrister, what's the difference?
Oh, wow. Actor, barrister, what's the difference?
Not what I wanted to hear.
No, isn't it? But here's the thing. You got off in the sense of you were found not guilty.
Yes.
And, that relief. And I want to move forward from that, which was, now it's, let's give life another go. You're not guilty. You got a job advising homeless people then. I
got one, yes, I just got one before.
Oh, okay.
Before that case.
Yeah.
And so now, as you say, it's give life another go, stop the drinking stuff again, and got myself a bicycle, and I had to cycle from sort of one end of London into the centre of London and back every day to go and advise homeless people.
Wow.
In this place.
And you're 26 now. Around about there is what I've got here.
25.
Yeah, because you bought a home with a girlfriend and you moved to Hackney.
That's right.
And at 26, you got employment, housing officer.
Yeah.
Now, this is ironic because let's go back to the days of those. I'm just going to get these notes there where it was the short life houses and the peppercorn rent. And now, of course, you got this job as a housing officer. So isn't it brilliant you had that experience of that, as low as it could go in having a legal home with nobody wanting them to care, nobody caring for those homes. You see, and now you're a housing officer, which is just brilliant, Hackney, London. We go, although you were given one of the toughest, I'd say, complexes, areas to look after as housing officer, you found it easy. You enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Because you know how to manage difficult adults, which you did from the age of 6. Tell me about that job, because I just want to touch on the layers of that.
It was quite difficult. Some of the people who lived around that area wouldn't pay their rent, or they're involved in antisocial behaviour, or some of them were indulging in criminal activity. And then, then there were just lovely people who were just trying to live their lives normally and trying to get out of that situation.
Do you think they could gel with you? Do you think they were gelling with you? Or you knew how to gel with them? Because you knew how to manage difficult people.
Yes. And I think, having dealt with some shady people in the past, it was not anything particularly hard to...
I love the way you say shady, but let's go back to the most two shady people, which is mom and dad. You had to learn to manage at the age of 6, 2 individuals that were effectively your emotional umbilical cord in life. Isn't that just ironic that you're now back to dealing with, and although I'm going to say, would it be fair to say that these people now are part of the complex and part of the role you had as housing officer, they were genuinely better people?
Yeah, there's a lot of really, really nice people. There were some lovely elderly people. There were some struggling families on the estate. There were those who were just sort of there temporarily because they knew that they were going to make their way out of there pretty quickly. There's a real, all human life was there.
What did you learn for yourself in those days of, being amongst those families of just striving to be something stable?
What it showed me was that this also related to my experience working in the dole office as well, is that whilst these systems are set up, they purport to help people, they don't always help people.
Okay.
The benefit system, in fact, if you look at it now, it's even more true, is set up to a large extent to ensure that people don't get the help that they require.
Wow.
Some people really don't get it. And it's designed that way, which is really infuriating. Then you look at how the housing is allocated similarly, and you think, well, hang on. In my view, perhaps these people might be more worthy or deserving of having a roof over their heads than those people. And yet your policies are saying something different. And when I started to examine what I thought were injustices or discrepancies in the system, then I got very angry, and that fueled my desire. I just looked at some of the people who ran the systems. I thought, none of you have ever been homeless. None of you have been in that position.
There it is, eh?
And then that really lit a fire in me somewhere.
I mean, in these days there, I'm seeing that you go back to learning, which is the Institute of Housing Professional Qualification, which is takes you to college once a week.
Yeah.
So now, you're going back into rewarding yourself of your academic ability, your mind, things that we could say that Dad was keen on. Then I asked myself, are you going back to type now, which is I learn, I get more because that's what makes Dad or people love me? Or is it become, I learn and do more because I'm striving as an entrepreneur? Am I learning and doing more because, it's a trigger? Was there questions, or was it just flowing?
No, I sort of knew exactly why I was doing it, because I thought, I want to be where those people are who make the decisions and stop some of this nonsense occurring, which I could see occurring. But then I knew that I was going to have to play the game better than some of them, and that meant getting those letters after my name, that qualification. I thought, if that's what it takes, that's what I'm going to do.
Wow. Here we are, we come into the, our conclusion and inner growth part of this episode. And again, there's been such a roller coaster of emotional endurance throughout this whole episode. And what I'm looking at here is, it's fair to say that drugs and alcohol were your mum and dad. And it's fair to say that your emotional stamina is maturing, not just in its way of starting to see the benefits of how you can help people, especially when you go as the housing officer, but also your emotional stamina was growing, where I got more endurance in order to do the drugs, the alcohol, and there's an emotional stamina there. And then the severe adaptability is now stabilizing, and you're finding more shape to life. There's been so many ups and downs in this episode. Yeah, I'm back normal. No, I'm not. I'm back normal. No, I'm not. Which means is also you've increased the intensity of what is your pain is love inside out. You'd increase because there's times in this where the sabotage was so high in order just because you want to be loved. Because you want to be loved. And I'm seeing that the 3D trauma now to life success formula that you have is organically really taking shape here from the layers. It's been such a beautiful episode, Tony. It really has. And we're in the eye of the storm now. We really are. And, we're going to go on to our next episode now. So do pick up with us on the next episode, which is, of course, Tony's near-death twice experience. Near-death twice experience. We're going to go into that on the next episode. But, it's such a beautiful journey, eh?
It's been a ride.
Yeah. Keep with us. Keep with us.